Damilola lived in a small apartment in Lagos with her mother. Her father had died years ago, and her mother worked hard as a tailor to provide for them. Damilola and her mother lived in a cramped one-room apartment in Ajangunal, Lagos. The room had a thin mattress pushed against the wall, a single fan that groaned as it spun, and a tiny gas cooker by the corner. Every morning, Mama Damilola will wakes up by 4 a.m. every morning to prepare for her job as a cleaner at a private school in Victoria Island. Her uniform is a simple green dress, hung by the door, washed and neatly pressed every night. She would boil water in a small kettle, pour it into a bucket for her bath, and leave quietly to catch the first bus. Damilola, a final-year student at a public university, had learned to manage the house while juggling her baking side hustle. Damilola, Mama would always say, make sure you lock the door well. These Lagos streets are not safe. Yes, Mama, Damilola would reply, knowing her mother was trying her best. By 7 a.m., Damilola would head to the local market to buy flour, sugar, and butter for her small baking business. Her customers, mostly neighbors and market traders, loved her cupcakes and small chops. Mama Damilola's day started with cleaning classrooms, mopping floors, and sometimes even washing the staff toilets. One day, a teacher, Mrs. Aide, approached her. Mama Damilola, you're always working so hard. Are you okay? Yes, Ma, she replied, forcing a smile. I have to work for my daughter's education. At home, Damilola juggled her school assignments and baking orders. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages. Please, can you deliver by 3 p.m.? Damilola, add extra cupcakes for me. By evening, Mama Damilola returned home, her body aching from the day's work. She would sit on a low stool, peeling yam for dinner while Damilola mixed cake batter nearby. How is work today, Mama? Damilola asked. Same as always, Mama sighed. The children in that school don't know how lucky they are. But you're doing your best for me, Damilola said, placing a comforting hand on her mother's shoulder. Mama smiled. That's all that matters. Life was not easy. Mama Damilola earned just enough to cover rent and some groceries, leaving little for other needs. One morning, while scrubbing the floors at the school, her boss, Mrs. Alabi, called her. Mama Damilola, you missed a spot by the staircase, she said sharply. I'm sorry, Ma. Mama Damilola replied, quickly moving to clean the area. She could not afford to lose the job, no matter how difficult it was. Meanwhile, Damilola struggled with her baking supplies. The oven in their shared compound was old and unreliable, often burning her cakes. Chai, this oven will ruin my business, Damilola muttered one day, pulling out a tray of burnt cupcakes. Don't worry, her friend Tadaleo said, your customers know your work is good. They'll understand. But Damilola couldn't shake the fear of losing her few clients. Mama Damilola was often exhausted, but she never complained. She wanted a better life for her daughter, even if it meant working extra hours. One evening, Damilola found her mother stitching an old uniform that had torn at the seam. Mama, let me buy you a new one, Damilola offered. No need, my daughter, Mama replied. Let's save money for your business. Their meals were simple rice with stew or yam and palm oil, but Mama always made sure Damilola ate first. Mama, you should eat too, Damilola would say. I'm fine, my dear. Your future is more important. One Friday, while delivering cupcakes to a client in Ikoi, Damilola couldn't help but notice the wide roads, tall buildings, and luxurious cars. So, this is how the other half lives, she whispered to herself. At the apartment lobby, she met Adebayo, who had stopped by to visit his friend. Their brief conversation left her both intrigued and nervous. The day Adebayo first noticed Damilola properly was a turning point. It was at his friend's apartment in Ikoi, where Damilola had come to deliver cupcakes. Adebayo, leaning casually on the balcony, watched as she stepped out of a tricycle, carefully balancing a box of baked goods. Her calm demeanor, steady hands, and confident stride caught his attention immediately. She wasn't dressed in designer clothes, but there was an elegance in her simplicity. Adebayo had met countless women in Lagos, but none like her. Who is she? He whispered to Tund. That's Damilola, Tund replied. She's the one behind those cupcakes you like so much. Intrigued, Adebayo found himself approaching her when the opportunity came. Hi, he said with a warm smile. I'm Adebayo. I've heard a lot about your baking. Can I try one? Damilola, shy but polite, handed him a cupcake. Sure. Let me know what you think. After taking a bite, Adebayo nodded in approval. This is incredible. You're very talented. Damilola smiled. Thank you. It's my way of supporting my family. My mom and I depend on this business. Her words struck him. Here was someone who worked tirelessly, not for luxury, but to survive. Over time, Adebayo found himself drawn to her calmness, humility, and quiet strength. Adebayo admired her humility and dedication. That brief conversation left him wanting to know more about her. Over the following weeks, Adebayo found reasons to visit Tun's place more often, hoping to run into Damilola. One day, he saw her struggling to carry a heavy bag of supplies into the building. Without hesitation, he rushed to help. You shouldn't be doing this alone, he said, taking the bag from her. I'm used to it, Damilola replied with a small smile. This is part of my business. Still, you don't have to do everything by yourself, Adebayo said firmly. As they walked together, Adebayo noticed more about her calm and polite way of speaking, her respect for everyone around her, and the quiet strength she carried despite her struggles. He had met many women in his life, but none like Damilola. One evening, after buying cupcakes from her again, Adebayo decided to share more about himself. Damilola, I'd like to tell you something, he began as they sat on a bench outside the apartment building. She looked at him curiously. What is it? I come from a wealthy family, he said, his tone serious. My father owns a chain of businesses, and my mother is a retired banker. But growing up, I always felt like money was all they cared about. They never understood the value of hard work, respect, or humility. That's why I admire you so much. Damilola blushed slightly, unsure of what to say. You're different, Damilola, he continued. You work so hard, yet you're so calm and respectful. It's rare to find someone like you in a city like Lagos. Thank you, Damilola said quietly, touched by his words. I want to get to know you better, Adebayo said. Not just as a baker, but as the person you are. And I want you to know that I'm serious about this. Back home, she told Mama about him. A rich man's son, Damilola. Be careful, Mama Damilola warned. People like that don't take girls like us seriously. Damilola nodded but couldn't stop thinking about him and her mother's word. Damilola felt both flattered and overwhelmed. She liked Adebayo but couldn't ignore the vast difference in their social status. As Adebayo spent more time with Damilola, he began to open up to her about his life. My parents are influential, he admitted one evening. My father owns several companies, and my mother was a top banker, but they've always wanted me to marry someone from our social class. Damilola hesitated. Why are you telling me this, Adebayo? Because I care about you, he said earnestly. You're unlike anyone I've met. You're hardworking, kind, and humble. I want you to know I'm serious about us. While Damilola was flattered, she was also apprehensive. Adebayo, I'm just a baker. My mother works as a cleaner. Your parents will never accept me. Adebayo, I'm just a girl from Ajangunal, she said softly to Adebayo as they speak together. My mother works as a cleaner, and I bake to keep us afloat. Your world is so different from mine. Adebayo reached for her hand. I don't care about their opinions. I care about you. That doesn't matter to me, Adebayo said firmly. What matters is the kind of person you are, and you, Damilola, are someone worth knowing. For the first time, Damilola began to see Adebayo not as just another wealthy man but as someone who truly cared about her for who she was. Their conversations grew deeper, and their bond stronger, as they began to learn more about each other's lives and dreams. Adebayo's parents, however, soon discovered his relationship with Damilola. It happened when his mother spotted him with her at a local cafe. That girl, his mother began that evening. She's not your kind, Adebayo. You deserve someone who matches our family status. She matches my heart. And that's what matters. Adebayo replied firmly. His father joined in. Adebayo, don't be naive. Do you think love alone can sustain a marriage? A girl from her background will never fit into our world. She doesn't need to fit into your world, Adebayo countered. I love her for who she is, not for her background. His parents were furious. If you continue with this relationship, his father warned, you'll have no support from us. Despite his parents' disapproval, Adebayo refused to give up on Damilola. He continued to see her, determined to show her how much he valued her. I told my parents about you, he admitted one day. Damilola froze. What did they say? They're against it, he said honestly, but I don't care. You mean everything to me, Damilola. Adebayo, I don't want to be the reason you're at odds with your family, she said, her voice trembling. You're not. He reassured her. You're the reason I'm willing to fight for what truly matters. One day, Adebayo's mother stormed into Damilola's house that evening, her face a picture of fury and disdain. She had come with a single harsh message. Damilola was not good enough for her son. Standing at the entrance of the modest home, she looked down at Damilola, her tone dripping with arrogance. You think you can marry my son? She sneered. Look at your house. Your family's so wretched. You are not of the same class as us. Adebayo deserves better than someone like you. You will only bring him down. Damilola stood frozen, her heart pounding as the harsh words hit her like daggers. She had always known that Adebayo's family might not accept her, but hearing it so bluntly shook her. She tried to keep her composure, not wanting to show the pain that was swelling inside her. As the mother continued to berate her, Damilola fought back tears, but she didn't say a word. She listened quietly, feeling humiliated but determined not to let it show. The idea that she wasn't good enough weighed heavily on her, but she couldn't bring herself to tell Adebayo about the visit. She didn't want him to feel torn between her and his family, especially not over something she couldn't change. When the mother finally left, Damilola stood by the door, her hands trembling. The words echoed in her mind, leaving her to wonder if she was truly worthy of Adebayo's love or if his mother's opinion would soon drive him away. But she kept the worries to herself, hiding them from Adebayo, hoping that love could overcome all the barriers his family tried to put between them. Adebayo's parents were determined to put an end to his relationship with Damilola. When persuasion failed, they turned to manipulation. One evening, as Adebayo returned from work, his mother sat him down in the family's grand living room. Her tone was softer than usual, but her words carried weight. Adebayo, she began, I know you think you love this Damilola girl, but you must understand something. Love alone is not enough to sustain a marriage. We've already spoken with the family of Kemi, the daughter of my friend, Chief Deji. She's well educated, refined, and from a family that matches our status. Adebayo clenched his fists. I've told you before, mother. I love Damilola, and I won't marry someone else just to please you. His father, sitting across the room, cut in sharply. Then you will lose everything, Adebayo. The family business, your inheritance, everything we've built for you. Do you really think you can survive without our support? If you refuse to do our wish, then you have nothing from us. Adebayo's father shouted and left the living room angrily. The room fell silent, the weight of his father's words hanging heavily in the air. Meanwhile, Damilola was oblivious to the storm brewing in Adebayo's family. She was busy fulfilling cupcake orders when Adebayo came to see her one evening. His face was tense, and his usual smile was absent. Damilola, we need to talk, he said, his voice low. She set down the mixing bowl and turned to him, concerned. What's wrong? Adebayo hesitated, his heart breaking as he prepared to tell her. My parents, they've arranged for me to marry someone else, Kemi, the daughter of their friends. They're giving me no choice. Damilola felt as though the ground had shifted beneath her. What do you mean, no choice, Adebayo? I thought you said you'd fight for us. I did, he said, his voice pleading. But they're threatening to disown me, to cut me off completely. They're using every weapon they have to force me into this marriage. Tears welled up in Damilola's eyes. So, what happens to us? Adebayo stepped closer, his own eyes glistening. I don't want to lose you, Damilola, but I can't let you suffer because of me. If I go against them, I won't be able to give you the life you deserve. You've already struggled so much. Damilola shook her head. I don't care about money, Adebayo. I care about you. But if you're being forced into this, her voice broke, and she turned away. A week later, Adebayo's engagement to Kemi was announced. It was the talk of Lagos society, with pictures of the handsome couple splashed across social media and newspapers. Damilola avoided the news, but it was impossible to escape. When Adebayo came to see her one last time, their goodbye was heart-wrenching. I'll always love you, Damilola, he whispered, holding her hands tightly. And I'll always love you, she replied, tears streaming down her face. But sometimes, love isn't enough. They embraced for what felt like the last time, their hearts breaking with every passing second. Even as Adebayo went through the motions of his new life, attending engagement parties and smiling for pictures, his heart remained with Damilola. He thought of her constantly, her laughter, her strength, her kindness. But for Damilola, life had to move on. She buried herself in work, determined to make something of herself despite the pain. She avoided places that reminded her of Adebayo, but his memory lingered in her heart like a bittersweet melody. Their separation was painful, but both knew it was the only path they could take for now. Adebayo's marriage to Kemi started on a grand note. The wedding was lavish, filled with the most influential people in Lagos, but beneath the glitz and glamour, cracks began to show. Kemi was nothing like Damilola. She was used to luxury and had no intention of adjusting to Adebayo's simple lifestyle. She rarely cooked, left the house in disarray, and treated the housemaids with disdain. One evening, Adebayo came home from work, tired and hungry. Good evening, Kemi, he greeted. What's for dinner? Kemi, lounging on the sofa with her phone, didn't even look up. How would I know? Asked the cook. Adebayo sighed, trying to stay calm. The cook isn't here today. Could you help make something quick? Kemi scoffed. Me? Cook? I'm not your maid, Adebayo. If you're hungry, go to a restaurant or make it yourself. Their arguments became frequent. Kemi constantly reminded Adebayo that she married him for status and not to serve him. Her disrespect hurt Adebayo deeply, and the love they were supposed to share turned into bitterness. One stormy evening, during another heated argument, Kemi said something that broke Adebayo completely. I don't even know why I married you, she snapped. You're nothing but a puppet to your parents. Do you think I'll stay in this marriage and waste my life on you? Adebayo stormed out of the house, his heart pounding with anger and frustration. He drove through the rain, his thoughts clouded. Suddenly, a truck appeared out of nowhere. Adebayo's car swerved, spinning out of control before crashing into a tree. When Adebayo was rushed to the hospital after his accident, Kemi was the last to arrive. She had been at a spa when the call came through, and even then, she took her time. By the time she entered the hospital room, Adebayo was already conscious, lying on the bed with bruises and bandages. Adebayo woke up in a hospital bed, bruised but alive. Adebayo's parents stood at his bedside, visibly shaken. His mother dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, whispering prayers of gratitude that her son was alive. Thank God you're alive, his mother said, tears in her eyes. Kemi walked in, her heels clicking against the hospital floor. She glanced at Adebayo briefly and then at her phone. You look fine, she said casually. It wasn't that serious, was it? Kemi, however, simply stood at the corner of the room, scrolling on her phone. Adebayo realized then that he couldn't stay in this loveless marriage any longer. Her tone was cold and detached, like she was discussing the weather. Adebayo's father frowned. Kemi, your husband was in a serious accident. This is no time for such remarks. Kemi shrugged, scrolling through her phone. Well, he's alive, isn't he? What's all the fuss about? Adebayo, still weak, watched her with a mix of disbelief and pain. Kemi, do you even care that I could have died? He asked, his voice trembling. I'm done, he said weakly. I can't do this anymore. She rolled her eyes. Don't be dramatic, Adebayo. I told you to drive carefully. This is what happens when you don't listen. As the nurses came in to check Adebayo's vitals, Kemi stood aside, looking visibly bored. At one point, she even complained about how long the checkup was taking. I have an appointment at the salon, she muttered. I can't stay here all day. Adebayo's mother couldn't hold back anymore. Kemi, is this how a wife behaves? Your husband is lying here injured, and all you care about is your salon appointment? Kemi folded her arms. With all due respect, Mama Adebayo, I'm not a nurse. There's nothing I can do for him here. When he's discharged, I'll be at home. Adebayo closed his eyes, the pain in his chest sharper than the physical injuries he had suffered. This wasn't the life he had envisioned when he married Kemi. He had hoped for companionship, care, and love, but all he received was indifference. He turned to his mother. Mama, please, let her go. I don't want to see her right now. Kemi scoffed, grabbed her purse, and walked out of the room without a backward glance. When she was gone, Adebayo sighed deeply. Mama, Papa, I've made a terrible mistake. His father, who had remained silent throughout, finally spoke. We all did, my son. We pushed you into this. But now, you must decide what's best for you. Adebayo looked at his parents, his resolve growing stronger. I want a divorce. I can't spend my life with someone who doesn't care about me. It's time I take control of my own happiness. His mother nodded, tears in her eyes. We'll support you, Adebayo. Do what you need to do. The days following the accident only confirmed Adebayo's fears. Kemi barely visited him in the hospital, and when she did, it was more out of obligation than concern. She complained about how his accident had disrupted her routine and even hinted that he should have been more careful. Honestly, Adebayo, she said during one visit, do you know how embarrassing it is to explain to my friends why I'm spending my time in a hospital? You really need to be more responsible. That was the final straw for Adebayo. He knew he couldn't spend the rest of his life with someone who had no regard for his well-being or feelings. Lying on that hospital bed, Adebayo made up his mind. As soon as he recovered, he would end this sham of a marriage and take control of his life again. A month later, Adebayo filed for divorce. The separation was bitter, but he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. Months later, after finalizing his divorce with Kemi, Adebayo couldn't stop thinking about Damilola. He realized that no amount of wealth or status could replace the genuine love and connection he felt with her. While Adebayo dealt with the turmoil of his marriage, Damilola continued to focus on her baking business and studies. Her hard work paid off as she started gaining more clients, including a few corporate orders from small events. One day, a representative from a catering company approached her after tasting her cupcakes at a local event. We'd like to collaborate with you, the woman said. Your baking is exceptional, and we think you'd be a great addition to our team. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Damilola shared the news with her mother. Mama, things are finally looking up for us, she said, hugging her tightly. Mama Damilola smiled, her eyes shining with pride. You've worked so hard, my daughter. You deserve this. Meanwhile, Damilola hadn't had it easy either in her relationships. She had tried to move on, but every relationship she entered ended in heartbreak. The men she met either didn't value her or couldn't match the love and respect Adebayo had shown her. One day, he decided to visit her. One evening, as she sat in her small bakery, reflecting on her life, a familiar figure walked in. Damilola, Adebayo said softly. She looked up, her heart skipping a beat. She turned, her eyes widening in surprise. Adebayo, what are you doing here? I had to see you, he replied, his voice full of emotion. I made a mistake, Damilola. I should never have let you go. I made a mistake, he said, stepping closer. I let others dictate my life, and I hurt you in the process. But I've changed, Damilola. I've walked away from everything just to be true to myself. And to you. Damilola studied his face, searching for sincerity. Adebayo, it's been a long time. I've moved on. I've built something for myself. I know, he said earnestly. And I'm so proud of you. But I'm here to ask for a second chance, not to take anything away from you, but to build a future with you together. Tears welled up in Damilola's eyes as she listened to his heartfelt plea. Adebayo, I don't know if I can trust you again. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it to you, he promised. Damilola's eyes filled with tears. But your parents, they've seen the truth now, Adebayo said. They know what I've lost. I'm not here to ask for forgiveness, Damilola. I'm here to ask for a second chance. This time, Adebayo's parents didn't stand in their way. They had learned their lesson, realized their mistakes, and decided to make amends. Now that Adebayo's parents had finally agreed to their relationship, his mother felt a deep sense of remorse for her earlier words and actions. The guilt had been weighing on her heart ever since the confrontation, and she knew it was time to make amends. One afternoon, she made the decision to visit Damilola. She dressed carefully, choosing a simple yet respectful outfit, and with a heavy heart, she made her way to Damilola's house. The path seemed longer than usual, as each step felt like a journey of humility, but she knew it was the right thing to do. When she arrived, Damilola's mother greeted her at the door, and for a moment, the two women stood in silence. There was an unspoken understanding between them, a shared history of tension and hurt, but today, it was different. I came to speak to Damilola, Adebayo's mother said softly, her voice filled with sincerity. Damilola, who had been inside, heard the voice and came to the door. When she saw Adebayo's mother, a mix of emotions crossed her face. She didn't know what to expect, but she was surprised when the older woman bowed her head slightly in a sign of respect. I owe both of you an apology, Adebayo's mother began, her voice trembling a little. What I said to you and your daughter was unforgivable. I let my pride and my fears cloud my judgment. I believed that because of your background, you weren't worthy of my son. I see now how wrong I was. Damilola stood quietly, surprised by the words. She had never imagined that this moment would come, especially after the harsh things Adebayo's mother had said to them both. I was wrong to speak to you that way, Adebayo's mother continued, her eyes now filled with regret. No one has the right to belittle another because of their circumstances. I've come to understand that love doesn't care about wealth or status. It's about the hearts of those involved. You have shown nothing but love, respect, and kindness to my son, and for that, I am deeply sorry. Damilola was speechless, her emotions too raw to express in that moment, but she could feel the sincerity in Adebayo's mother's words, and for the first time, she felt truly seen and valued. I am truly sorry, Adebayo's mother added. I've come to ask for your forgiveness and to offer my blessing for your relationship with my son. I now realize that you are the one he loves, and that is enough for me. Damilola's mother, who had been silently listening, spoke up. Forgiveness is a gift, and we accept it, she said with a soft smile. I'm glad that we've come to this understanding. Tears welled up in Damilola's eyes as she finally found her voice. Thank you, she whispered, her heart swelling with gratitude. I never expected this, but I'm so happy to hear it. Adebayo's mother smiled warmly, relieved that the words had been heard. I'm glad we could finally have this conversation, she said. I'm glad we could finally have this conversation, she said. I truly wish you both the best. With a final nod of understanding, she left, leaving Damilola and her mother standing in the doorway. It was a moment of closure, a moment where the past had been forgiven, and a new chapter in their lives was beginning. Adebayo and Damilola rekindled their love, taking things slowly but with a renewed sense of purpose. Their wedding was a simple, joyous affair, filled with laughter, love, and close friends. Damilola's mother, proud and happy, gave her blessing with tears in her eyes. Years later, their home was filled with the laughter of their children. Adebayo and Damilola had built a life together, one rooted in love, respect, and understanding. Adebayo supported her growing business, helping her find better equipment and connecting her with opportunities. Years later, Damilola and Adebayo stood together at the opening of her bakery, surrounded by family, friends, and the community that had supported her journey. As they cut the ribbon, Adebayo whispered, "You've always been my inspiration, Damilola. Thank you for giving me another chance. Damilola smiled, her heart full, and thank you for choosing love over everything else. Their journey had been painful, but it led them to a love that was worth every trial. Their story became a testament to the power of perseverance, humility, and the belief that true love can overcome even the greatest challenges. Thank you so much for joining us on Story Zone today for another incredible African tale. We hope you enjoyed the story as much as we loved sharing it with you. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss an adventure with us. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and share your favorite part of the story. And if you have a tale you'd like to see featured, let us know. Until next time, keep embracing the magic of our African stories. Stay tuned for more, and remember, our stories are more than just tales. They're a part of who we are. See you in the next one. Thank you so much for your time.